Last time, I said I'd take you somewhere I'd never been before. Somewhere I had no reason to go. This is that place, the Vosges. I'll be honest, 6 months before we went, I couldn't have found it on a map. This is a one place, one feeling episode, and today, that feeling is surprise. We didn't plan this trip, not really. We needed somewhere green, somewhere quiet, somewhere away from the city for a while. Someone mentioned a house in a place called Dabo. We looked it up, it looked good, and we booked it. That was the whole plan. My wife, my daughter, and me. A house we've never seen, in a part of France I knew almost nothing about. And what we found there, over the days that followed, was one of those rare things. A place that keeps surprising you. And by the end, you can't quite explain what happened. But you know something did. That's the good thing about having no plan. There's nothing to be let down by, there's only what's there. Dabo is a small village in the north of the Vosges. Forested hills in every direction, a village square, quiet roads, and air that felt like it came from somewhere cleaner than where I'd been living. The house sat right at the edge of the forest, not near it, on the edge of it. You opened the back door, and the trees were right there. Every morning, before anyone else stand up, I stand in the doorway with a coffee, just listen. And what you hear in the Vosges in the early morning is almost nothing. Wind in the trees, a bird now and then, in the village slowly waking up somewhere down the road. If you've been living in a city that kind of quite takes a day or two to get used to, you keep waiting for it to stop. And it doesn't. My daughter found the garden within about 4 minutes of us arriving, which is the right thing to do, really. Kids know this. When you get somewhere new, you don't stand around thinking about it, you just go in. From Debo, we drove to Strasbourg. And Strasbourg is one of those cities that stops you in your tracks. Not because it's loud or busy, but because you can't quite work out what you're looking at. The buildings look German, the street signs are in French, the food is both and neither, and in the restaurants, in the market, and on the streets, you hear French and German switching back and forth, mid sentence sometimes. And between them, something older. A local way of talking called Alsatian, which sounds like someone built a bridge between France and German and just left it there. Strasbourg sits right on the border between France and Germany. Over the centuries, it has been French, then German, then French, then German again. It has passed back and forth across the river more times than anyone wanted. And what you get after all that is a city that stopped trying to be one thing. It's not French, it's not German, it's its own thing. A place that only exists because of where it sits, right at the crossing point. And honestly, that's what makes it so good. We walked through the old quarter, the port along the canals with the old wooden houses. Every building is different. Flower boxes at every window, the smell of food coming out of restaurants, even in the morning. It looks like it was built for a fairy tale. But people actually live there. They go to work there, they argue there, they buy their groceries there. That mix, something that beautiful and something that ordinary, is harder to find than you think. Heading south from Strasbourg, there's a road that turns along the foot of the Vosges through a long row of old wine villages. We drove it slowly, very slowly, actually, because every minute one of us said, "Wait, stop, look at that." Colmar is the most famous of these villages. And yes, it really does look like the pictures. The buildings are yellow and pink and green, all pressed against each other along narrow streets, reflected in the water of a small canal. It's not a filter, it's not clever photography, it's just how it looks. But Colmar knows it's beautiful. You can feel it. The tourist shops, the tour groups, the very neat, very organized version of itself that shows the world. But Ribeauvillé is different. Smaller, a bit rougher on around the edges. There's an old ruined castle on the hill above the village that looks like it gave up trying to stay standing a few hundred years ago and just stayed anyway. The village still feels like a working place. The vineyards start right at the edge of the houses and climb the hill in neat rows. In the late afternoon light, they glow. And then you have Kaysersberg. Kaysersberg stopped me. It's a small town. There's an old castle above it, a stone bridge over a little river, and a church from 1100. And Albert Schweitzer was born there, the doctor and tinker who spent most of his life working in Africa. There's a small place on the main street that marks where he was born. Most people walk past it. I stood on that stone bridge for a while. I'm not totally sure why. Something about the size of it, a small town, a small bridge, a small river, and from a place this small, one person decided to go to the other side of the world and spend their whole life there. You can't measure that distance in kilometers. And the last village we've stopped was Sélestat. Less famous than the others, which is exactly why it felt the most real. A working town with a market square where local people actually eat lunch. We sat outside. My daughter ate something she didn't recognize and decided she liked it. That felt right. The Vosges are not the kind of mountains that show off. No sharp peaks, no big drops, nothing that makes you hold your breath. What they are is something quieter. Long forested hills, deep valleys, and lakes that sit in the hollows between the hills like someone spilled something there and never bothered to clean it up. We drove up through Orbey on a morning when mist was still sitting in the valley below. The road went through trees, and then the trees opened, and suddenly you could see all the way back across the flat land of Alsace to the Rhine River. And on clear days, people told us you can't see Germany on the other side. Two countries, one view. That line that has caused so much trouble over the centuries. From up here, it's just a river. And Lac de Gérardmer is the biggest lake in the Vosges. It sits in a valley that feels held protected. The water was very still in the morning. There are boats you can rent, a small town along one shore, and forest coming right down to the water. We walked along the edge for an hour. We didn't talk that much. In a quiet place like that, you don't need to. The quiet does the work. But the lake that stayed with me was Lac de Pierre Percée. Pierre Percée means pierced stone. There's an old ruined castle on a hill above the lake. And through the last wall that's still standing, someone carved a round hole in the stone long ago. You climb up through the forest, you walk through what's left of the old gate, and then right there, that hole in the wall, see the lake below, the forest hills beyond, and the sky above. All of it perfectly framed. Like a window someone built just to show you this one view. My daughter ran straight to it. She stood in front of it with her arms out wide. She wanted a photo, and I stood there taking that photo, thinking she won't remember this. She's too young. This won't be a memory she can hold on to, but something of it stays. The cold air, the smell of the forest, standing inside old stone walls, and looking through a hole at a lake below. These things go somewhere in you, even when you're small. You carry places, even the ones you don't remember. There's something about the Vosges that I didn't expect. A feeling of being in between, not lost, not stuck, just in between. The Vosges from the western edge of Alsace, on one side of the mountains, the wine villages, the German style buildings, the border with Germany just across the river. On the other side, the rest of France. A different feel, a different pace. And when you're up high enough to see both sides, something shifts. The mountain doesn't know it's a border. The forest doesn't. The lake doesn't. The stone with a hole in it doesn't know that people spent centuries arguing about which country it belongs to. You know that feeling. Standing somewhere so old and so still that the thing you normally worry about, where you're from, where you're going, just get a bit quieter for a moment. That's what good travel does. We left on Sunday morning. My daughter slept in the back seat. My wife drove. I watched the hills get smaller in the mirror as we came down off the mountains and back onto the flat road. And I thought about what it means to go somewhere with no reason. I think the answer is this. When you don't go somewhere with a plan, the place gets to show you what it actually is. No checklist, no version of it you've already decided on, just the thing itself. The Vosges won't be on most people's lists. They don't try to be. They just sit there in the east of France, being exactly what they are: forested, quiet, layered with history, and completely fine with the fact that most people drive past them on the way somewhere else. I'm glad we stopped. This was the Vosges. This was the place I had no reason to go, which turned out to be exactly the reason why. Next time on the Wanderlust sessions, I'll take you somewhere that everyone thinks they know. Somewhere so photographed, so visited, so written about that most people who go there never actually see it. Next time, we look closer.